this meme is actually just a word for word, Cyanide and Happiness comic, which is just a web comic out there. So there's 4 panels, and the first panel, guy number 1, sees a friend approaching and thinks internally, all right, time for small talk. Let's keep it casual. Guy number 2 approaches. Hey, the weather's been crazy, huh? Yeah, because the world is ending.
It's just like millennials at the extreme.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Can't say anything because the world's ending.
Yup. So, welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide to the Cosmere for the Cosmere Curious. I'm your co-host and doom and gloom guy, Nick Gorman.
And I'm your co-host, AJ Gorman.
Today we're reviewing Hero of Ages, Book 3 in the Mistborn series. This is a spoiler-free review for before you read. I will say there are spoilers in this episode for the previous 2 books in the series, The Final Empire and Well of Ascension. So if you haven't listened, or if you haven't read those, you've been warned.
Yeah, the pre-reads for a 3rd book in the series is a little weird because...
We gotta have spoilers.
Well, yeah, but it's also like, well, if you read the first 2 books, you're probably going to read the 3rd one. So it's not like I feel like for first books in the series, we're like convincing people to like read it. Whereas with the 3rd book, it's like, it's not really... We're not trying to convince you to read it anymore. We're just kind of assuming that you will be reading it.
Well, I'll say, I enjoyed this book. I've read this book multiple times, and I enjoyed it more when I took a break between The Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages, between books 2 and 3, because they are very similar in tone, and it's obviously the same setting. So it's nice to have a breather.
Well, it's tough to be in a dystopian world for ever.
Right. And so I think it's good to take a break between books 2 and 3, do something else, read something else, but then you might forget some of the details. And boy howdy, there was a lot of foreshadowing and, playing the long game.
At the same time, Brandon's books get better with every reread. So you're not going to catch everything on your first read or even your second read.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So even if you don't remember everything from books 1 and 2 and you read book 3, you'll catch it in the next reread.
Yeah, but I mean, this is for the casual readers. So maybe you don't want to read it 5 times, and that's why you're here. Anyway,
I suppose.
So this is let's talk a little bit about, what the context was, the publication info, the meta book stuff. So this is the finale for Mistborn Era 1. If you hear about a Mistborn trilogy, this is the ending of that trilogy. Although there are books after this in the series, there's the Wax and Wane series,
there are different time periods.
Yeah, and so this is Era 1. The critical consensus kind of is that Brando Sando really stuck the landing on this one. He showed off in a great way. He's got an eye for detail, and he plays the long game with those. And that's, he's sort of become, famous for that for other series, but this was the first, oh shit, there's this detail that stood out in the Final Empire that really, came to fruition here.
So I think we've mentioned it before, but Brandon is a meticulous planner. He will outline, he will create an outline for the whole age, and then fill in details before he writes a single chapter. So his planning skills are very much evident in this series.
Yeah. And I think, it's worth mentioning that Hero of Ages Book 3 is the highest rated on Goodreads out of Mistborn Era 1. So, more people...
You said there was selection bias on that.
I do think that there's selection bias there because more people are going to read The Final Empire than going to read, Book 1 than Book 3. And then maybe they'll decide it isn't a series for them, so they're not going to continue.
So the people who do continue, obviously, are going to rate it higher, or more likely to rate it higher.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, it's still, when you look on the Reddits and stuff, it's not my personal favorite. I still prefer Book 1, but
I found someone on Reddit who agrees with me that the second book's the best.
All right, hot take served cold. So, and I guess the other, meta thing about this book, is that, I think we've said this before multiple times, but the way that he wrapped up Mistborn Era 1 and the way he stuck the landing was one of the big reasons why B Money was tapped by Harriet McDougal to finish Wheel of Time. She was Robert Jordan's husband and editor, and so when Jordan passed, Brandon Sanderson wrote a lovely eulogy for him that got McDougal's attention, and then she read Mistborn Era 1 and said, "Oh my God, this is perfect. He's got such an eye for those details and having everything come to fruition books later. That's exactly what she wanted for the finale of Wheel of Time."
Mm-hmm. And we as readers, I'm sure we can all be annoyed when we love a series and then we get to the last book and you're like, man, that just didn't work.
And that's not what happens here, right?
That's not what happens here. And it's really it's tough on us to read it. It's tough on the authors to write it. I'm looking at you, Patrick Rothfuss.
All right. Well, I don't think he needs any more pressure. But, I don't know. We keep bringing this up because, Hero of Ages and especially being, selected to finish the Wheel of Time, that was a big moment in Brandon Sanderson's career. It earned him a lot of fans he wouldn't have otherwise had and gave him a lot of prestige. So, I mean, it's just a key moment there. And it's, this book had a big role in getting that.
And hopefully you agree that he stuck the landing. I know when you were rereading this, it had been a while since your last reread of Hero of Ages, and at first you were like, I don't remember him sticking the landing.
Well, I don't, we can talk about our feeling, about our where we think this book is strong and weak, we can talk about that.
In the next episode.
But, I would say I guess I want to get through, the sort of the meta book stuff first, because there's the other thing is before you read, there are different, versions of this book.
Yes.
And I have not listened to the audiobook, but I have heard that the audiobook unintentionally has something that many readers consider to be a spoiler in like the first chapter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, don't do the audiobook.
So, and it's a key plot twist near the end of the book, and it takes away a lot of the suspension, the tension. Like audiobook might be great for a reread or a re-listen when you already kind of know all the twists, but like
don't do it, and don't do audiobook for your first read.
Or if you're okay with spoilers and you think it's more about the journey than the destination, but
you
go
don't
into it. Just go into it knowing that. Yeah.
I don't know if you're gonna use a journey versus destination argument, but
yeah. Anyway, I would shoehorned in whatever. Then do we want to go right into a plot recap of the previous books, or do you want to talk about our feelings about this one first?
To be honest, I'm a little bit afraid for you to go into a recap.
Okay, yeah, because it's it might be 20 minutes of just me rambling.
Yeah, so
let's talk about our feelings about this book first.
No,
let's go. We
do the two.
That way, no, we can put it at the end, so that way, if you've already, if you're going right into it and you already remember everything, that way you could just skip it. You can turn off the podcast. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That sounds fine.
Yeah. Do you want to share your feelings about the book first? Spoiler free.
Yeah. So I think the ending is satisfying.
Yeah.
It's not overly predictable, but it also makes sense with all the foreshadowing that he put in.
Yes. There are so many payoffs from previous books. It's really good.
It is. I find this third book to be a lot harder to follow than the previous two books because there are so many things coming together. It can be kind of hard to remember all of the things.
Well, and I think compared to the previous books, this one's got a little bit of like Game of Thrones syndrome, where the main characters split up into different regions.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads.
And so the threads interweave a little bit. So it is a little more challenging to keep up with who's, where, why, what are they doing.
Yes. But it is worth it. If you put the mental effort in to kind of keep track of the different threads, it's worth it. It has a very nice build. Yeah.
Well, and I'll say, the Hero of Ages kind of has the same strengths and weaknesses the rest of Mistborn Era 1. Like I did notice there were some word choices that seemed a little out of place. Like there was one Shit, I forget. There was like a weird like there was an idiom that stuck out to me, and I was like, "What? Huh?"
Yeah, I mean, don't forget this is still
Yeah, I was about to
early
say
in
this is still
his
pretty,
career.
but I mean, I also can't be too upset about that because one of the things I like about Mistborn is how easy it is to read. It's not, it's not Tolkien,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like so it's both a strength and a weakness. Yeah. But if you liked all the previous books, it's it's the same style, same sort of writing there.
Same sort of writing.
And like it, I guess my opinion is, I like this book much more when I took a break between Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages. But there is one thing in particular that really keeps this from bumps it down from being like a 10 out of a 10 out of 10 to like an 8 out of 10. And there's one plot thread in particular that gets a little too abstract or surreal, and I don't, more on that in the next episode, but it's something that I usually like in books, but it didn't work for me on this one. Certainly, and especially not my first read through, but yeah.
Well, you just gotta find the parts that you like and focus on
Yeah, I was
that.
about to say, 8 out of 10 is not bad. I was about to say, like, I still enjoy the book.
20% hit seems like a lot, but
Well, okay, whatever. I grade on a bell curve, so like the difference between 8 out of 10 and 10 out of 10, not all that much.
I did not realize you put that much thought into it. Okay.
Listen. I use statistics anyway. Whatever.
I know you understand statistics. I do not.
Yeah. So, the other thing that's really nice about this book, especially now that we are Cosmere aware, the epigraphs provide so much detail about the underlying way things work in the Cosmere, right?
Yes. On the first reads, it does not make any sense whatever, and you kind of just skip over it. And then on the rereads, you're like, they just spelled it out. They just spelled it out, like just simply like that.
Well,
and I'm like,
not necessarily even a reread,
this.
but like if you went into Stormlight first and you're coming into this, like it really explains a lot of the underlying, the way the gods are interacting with each other in Stormlight. It's the way the Cosmere works, right?
I mean, I think there's a little bit more extrapolation if you're going to be bringing it back to Stormlight, but yeah.
Yes, but it's like, yeah, there's a lot that gets that isn't quite said as explicitly there, that it's like, oh, applying that same sort of thing.
I'm just so used to digging for information for the greater Cosmere. Like, it surprised me on this reread of like how much things are just spelled out.
Well, and I will say that I kind of liked that about the previous books, where the epigraphs were quite cryptic, and in this one it's pretty plain. Like,
well, it doesn't seem that way on your first read.
Fair.
But if you had put in more effort into learning about the Cosmere, and this is your second, third, fourth, 10th reread, then yes, they do seem plain.
Yeah, where it's just like, oh, and this is what happened. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of world hoppers to watch out for in this book, there aren't any new people from other series except where it's super obvious and spelling them out would be a spoiler. So I think that's even going to be in the next episode. We'll talk about that. Hoyd is mentioned but does not actually appear on screen. But yeah, so if you're reading or rereading and looking for the context of where this fits within the Cosmere, I mean, there's a lot of hidden, there's still new foreshadowing in this book. So if check out that. But I mean, really the Cosmere connections are mostly in the epigraphs here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about those in the next 2 episodes from now.
Yeah.
I think that's all we can really say without spoiling. So we might want to go into that plot summary.
Nick rambling for 20 minutes about the plot summary previous book.
I'll try to see if I can. I'm going to let you go, and then I'll try to
chime in. Yeah, chime in
if I can.
All right. So each of the Mistborn Era 1 books is kind of built around a fantasy trope. Like the Final Empire was mostly about the Dark Lord and overthrowing the Dark Lord. Well of a la Sauron from Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. Well of Ascension was about prophecies and twisting and inverting those. And Hero of Ages, as the title suggests, is really about heroes. So
But what's the trope? Well, I suppose we can't really get into it.
I was about to say it's but it's about what is a hero, basically, right? Like I was about to say it's like so the first book, The Final Empire, introduces us to the setting. Scadrial is a dark, gloomy world covered in ash during the day and mists that come out at night. Everything is brown, everything is gray. It sucks. The Final Empire is ruled by the immortal god king, the Lord Ruler, who has basically been around for 1,000 or so years. Rules the world with his religion. The obligators are his bureaucrats. The inquisitors are.
Was there a name for their religion?
The Steel Inquisition.
Oh,
I think the Steel Ministry. I don't know. The Inquisitors are the coolest bad guys. They've got spikes all covering them, including through their eyes. So the plot of this book is that Kelsier, known as the survivor of Hatson after he survived a death sentence, is trying to lead a heist/rebellion against the Lord Ruler, and he motivates people to join his crew with the promise of a share in the Lord Ruler's adium stash. Adium is a fictional metal. We'll get into it in a second. Kelsier and his adoptive disciple, Vin, are rare people called Mistborn. They can eat and then burn metals to use magic called allomancy, which lets them telepathically pull or push against metals, to manipulate people's emotions, to gain superhuman strength or, senses.
You're getting really detailed here.
Well, but like the magic system is pretty important, right?
Right, but we're doing a plot summary. Not.
Well, the edges of the magic system are always important in Brando Sando books.
That's true.
More commonly, but still rare, people are called mistings that can burn a single type of metal for one specific effect.
So you can either be a misting, so you can burn one type of metal, or you can be a mistborn and you can burn all of them, all of the metals.
Yeah.
There's no in between.
Yeah. And especially Mistborn are the only ones who can use a special metal called adium, which lets them see shadows from a few seconds in the future. And that's really nice when you're an assassin trying to not, be killed by bodyguards or whatever. So adium is the standard for money in the Final Empire, underpinning the whole economy. So it's even more important than gold. So back to the heist/rebellion. Kelsier, Vin, and their friend/servant, Sazed, who has a completely different metal-based magic system called Farukami, and their band of misfits basically start a house war within the nobles, in part by having Vin spy on the nobles and infiltrate the high society. But Vin falls in love with the idealistic boy Elend. Meanwhile, Kelsier's brother Marsh infiltrates the Inquisitors, and ultimately becomes an Inquisitor himself, which was kind of like, oh shit, they thought he died in the process of being an Inquisitor, but plot twist at the end, oh no, he survived. Kelsier gets killed by the Lord Ruler, but he had a prearranged deal with a shape-shifting Khandra named Orisur, and so Orisur eats Kelsier's bones and then appears as
eats his
Kelsier.
body. Yeah,
eats his whole body, and then takes on Kelsier's appearance and continues preaching rebellion. So Kelsier becomes a martyr, a Christ figure, and that really kicks off the rebellion against. And
Khandra are not well known, so no one's really, everyone is pretty much fooled by the fact that someone is shapeshifting into.
Yeah, that this guy who looks like Kelsier, talks like Kelsier, knows things that Kelsier knows. Everybody's fooled, right?
Right.
Vin, still grieving from her mentor's death, breaks into the Lord Ruler's palace and is promptly overwhelmed by the Inquisitors there. But as she is about to be executed, two things happen. One, Marsh turns on the other Inquisitors, revealed that he's still alive, basically. and that gives her an opening. And then Vin mysteriously ingests the mists and burns those rather than metal for like supercharged allomancy. She kills the Lord Ruler, who basically calls her an ingrate as she's dying. And then Elend, one of the last nobles who didn't get run out of town, takes the throne for himself.
And most mysteriously, as the Lord Ruler is dying, he says, "You don't know what I do for you."
You don't know what I do for you.
And that is present progressive, as in he was still doing stuff.
Yeah. So that moves on to the Well of Ascension. So a year later in the capital city of Luthadel, don't look at your watch. Ugh.
It buzzed.
All right. Ellen's abusive dad, Ellen's former friend, and some random paraplegic, guy named Chet are all separately trying to hold the capital city of Luthadel under siege at the same time. Everyone wants that fucking adium stash, which the crew never found after overthrowing the Lord Ruler.
But everybody still thinks that they have it.
Everybody still thinks that they have it. Elend has set up a parliamentary government, so he's not just, emperor. He's got a parliament, but he is not good at running it. So then there's a bunch of different plot threads going on during the siege of Luthadel. I guess the first one is Elend's estranged, Mistborn, kind of insane half-brother Zane shows up and starts stalking Vin, trying to convince her to run away with him. But by the end of the book, Vin kind of straight up murders Zane after he tries to kiss her, and nothing of value was lost. Elend loses his kingship, and then gets his act together with the help of another Terrace servant named Tindwyl.
I don't think she was ever a servant, but
Well, she definitely poses as one a few times, though. Anyway.
I don't know if I agree with that, but okay. I'll let it pass.
Yeah. Elend loses his kingship, gets his act together with the help of Tindwyl, has a real journey of meaning. Meanwhile, Sazed and Tindwyl spend most of the book, A, trying to figure out why the heck are the mists suddenly starting to kill people all of a sudden, and B, trying to decipher an ancient Terrace prophecy that Sazed found inscribed on a piece of metal in a secret Canton Inquisition monastery.
See, I would say that they spent all of the entirety of the book trying to deny feelings for one another and still trying to get together with one another.
Right, but yes, you're not wrong. But their cover story is they're studying the prophecy so hard. And the prophecy is specifically about the Hero of Ages, a mythic hero who will release the power at the Well of Ascension and save the world. They've always thought that referred to the Lord Ruler, who ascended to godhood by taking the power at the Well of Ascension. But when they found that tablet with a lot of details about the prophecy, and combined with Elendi's journal, who was plot device from the last book, they realized that Lord Ruler doesn't fit the prophecy at all, and it might even be Vin. So Vin spends the book with the Khandra Orisur after finding an unexpected pair of bones in the palace, thinking that there is a second Khandra spy in their ranks. Turns out that spy was actually Orisur, whose real name was Tensoon, because Tensoon the Khandra took Orisur's place and was actually the spy working for one of the besiegers. It doesn't matter. Vin is also haunted by a growing thrumming sound that nobody else hears. She's also haunted by a spirit made out of mist. There's shenanigans about getting Vin, Elend, and Spook, who's one of the younger members of the crew, out of the city before it's invaded by the invading armies. But to make a long story short, Vin kind of ends up single-handedly decimating each of the armies that are besieging the city, including the monstrous Koloss. Immediately after that, she is drawn to the source of that thrumming sound, which is the Well of Ascension, which was buried underneath the Lord Ruler's palace. So she takes up the power at the Well of Ascension, including heroically sacrificing her now husband Elend, who had kind of been almost a little bit disemboweled by the previously peaceful Mist Spirit, and she gives up the power like the prophecy told her she needed to.
And she sacrifices Elend.
Yep. And then an eldritch voice announces, "I'm free!" Volcanoes erupt, thunder, earthquakes, probably a fucking eclipse. It's very clear that, oh no, something bad happened. So Sazed, split screen, Sazed had been realizing that the prophecies were not quite, the writings about it had not quite been right. they had been altered by some unknown incorporeal force. And when Sazed starts to have doubts about the prophecy, he tries to warn Vin, like, hey, maybe don't go to the Well of Ascension, take the power just yet. Let's figure out a little bit more. But then Marsh, formerly their friend, formerly the good Inquisitor, starts acting insane and says, I don't know why, but I gotta kill you. Marsh does not succeed. But he does, take Sazed out of commission for a little bit. And after recovering, Sazed consults the original metal tablet containing the clues about the prophecy and sees the very first line, which had been removed from his notes about it.
Last line.
Very first line. I pound these words in steel, for anything not set in metal cannot be trusted.
Oh. But the last line had mentioned that they
absolutely could not release the power at the well. Right.
Well, could release the prisoner there.
Yes. So putting two and two together, they're like, oh, Vin maybe was supposed to take up the power, but was absolutely not supposed to release it. And then by doing that, she released a great evil into the world. Whoops. So Elend, who had been previously kind of sort of disemboweled by the Mist Spirit, is actually, is also saved by the Mist Spirit a few minutes later because, the whatever was released at the well got released. The Mist Spirit points Vin towards a strange metal nugget, and then she helps Elend to swallow that metal, and he becomes a Mistborn too.
Which means he can burn pewter and
be super strong and
stay alive while he heals.
While he heals from that massive gut wound. I think the other big thing is that who's alive and who's dead, because there is a siege and an invasion.
So most of the crew does survive, but
Kelsier, importantly died at the end of book 1.
Right.
And they're all still living in his shadow. Clubs, who is Spook's uncle, died in the invasion.
And Doxson is dead.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, and Tindwyl. Most importantly, Tindwyl. And she's, she was very special to Sazed. And they, like you said, they spent most of the book denying their feelings for each other. As well, and I thought it was a big character moment for Elend, but I'm not sure it really gets. Elend's old noble buddy Jace does not survive. In fact, Elend personally executes Jace, cuts off his head and everything. So that's,
I don't know if that's
something
super important for the rest of the series.
I don't know. It was a big, he's no longer the young idealist.
Yeah, and B-Money, keeps, hits that point home in the very first chapter of Hero of Ages.
Yeah.
He wants you to, because it's hard to transition thinking of Elend as, the bookworm to what he has had to become. To the beginning of Hero of Ages.
Like
so
we said
he hits that home like the very first chapter.
And I mean, like we said for the post-read on Well of Ascension, he knows what a good government would be like, and he just failed to set it up. So like now, by the end of
you have to have a good you have to have a good set of circumstances to start that kind of government, and he realizes that he did not have that, so he could not successfully set one up.
And so by the end of that second book, they basically abandoned their attempt at democracy, and Elend is set up as an emperor again.
So
ruling
it's a final
over,
empire all over again.
Yes. So there are obvious questions at the end of book 2. Chief among them: where the fuck is the Lord Ruler's Adium treasury? Everybody wants it, and they would be powerful enough to rule the world. Nobody could stand against them.
And why do we even care about it, since it's not going to help, and it's not going to help save the people?
Yeah, well. Another question is, what's up with the creature that was released from the well? Could it be trapped again? Why did Marsh turn on Sazed so suddenly? And why are the Mists still attacking people? What caused them to start attacking people? Why are they lasting longer into the day when they previously were only out at night? So there's a lot of those questions were brought up in the last book and were not answered. And they continue to hang over this book. That's all I've got about Hero of Ages.
Are you sure? You don't want to go on for another 10 minutes?
I mean, do you want me to?
No.
I probably could.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Listen.
I'm just like, man, we're going into a lot of detail.
All right, but like, it's only, even that bit, all right, 15 minutes, come on, and there are a lot of those details that do pay off, I'm just saying.
Okay. Good recap, dear.
Anyway, so I guess housekeeping stuff. So the next things we're gonna read, we're gonna finish Hero of Ages and do our post read and our Cosmere Connections episode. Then we're gonna take a bit of a break, actually. So we
didn't make it a year, guys. We didn't make it a year.
Oh my god. So but how many Cosmere books have we read this year? All right, whatever. So we're gonna take a break from the Cosmere and we're gonna read and review my favorite standalone fantasy book, The Raven Tower. It has some interesting thematic.
Is it fantasy?
It is.
Okay.
It's got some interesting thematic similarities with Hero of Ages, and I'm very excited to dig into those with you because you haven't read it. So
yeah, I've just been hearing about it for 3-4 years now,
and I've only read it 7 or 8 times in that time.
The most common comment that I hear from you about this book is, "I just finished it. I'm gonna start it again."
That's not true.
I'm pretty sure I've heard that at least 3 times.
Okay, but I also say, holy shit, I didn't even notice this on the previous read. This is such a subtle, anyway. After The Raven Tower, we'll probably read Mistborn Secret History, which is a novella, but it is sort of a parallel story to Mistborn Era 1. And it tells a lot of what's going on, sort of the cosmic forces of good and evil with that. And then we're kind of figuring out what our next Cosmere book will be after Secret History.
And we would love your feedback.
Yeah.
So if you want to send us an email or put a comment in the show, however you want to do it.
Allegedly, Spotify does Q&A and like polls and stuff now, so we're going to try putting up a poll. We'll see how it goes. Or
just send us an email.
CosmereCasual@gmail.com. Message us on Reddit, u/CosmereCasual. I think that's it.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So our intro and outro music is licensed through Tribe of Noise. The artist is Ketsa, and the song is Odyssey. Thanks for podcasting with me, dear.
Thank you for podcasting with me. And until next time, keep your wits about you.